Today's session is Unleashing the Power of Web 3.0 to create new and memorable retail experiences. Leading our panel is Vicki Cantrell. She's the CEO of Vendors in Partnership. Why don't we welcome them with a good round of applause to get our day started. Vicki, it's up to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this morning, and we've had a lot of fun prepping for this session, so I hope you will really enjoy it and lots of good learnings from it. So I'm going to let my fellow panelists introduce themselves. Olga?
Hello, everyone. My name's Olga. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Emperia. We're an immersive commerce platform, and we work with brands and retailers to help boost customer engagement, create new memorable consumer experiences, and boost conversion rates with 3D technologies and virtual stores. Over to you.
Hey, Olga. Mickael. Hi, everyone. I work at Arianee, and we're a consumer engagement platform, and we use Web3 and digital collectibles to connect brands and their community directly and to help brand acquire customers and serve them better. And yeah, happy to be here.
Great. I think what we'll do is level set to start. Olga, why don't you just talk to us just briefly about Web3. If I said to you, what is Web3? Let's set the stage because I think it'll make a lot of sense for what we're about to.
I think when we think about Web3 and when we start thinking about it, there's a lot of confusion around this NFT and blockchain. There's just so many things that are really, really difficult to understand. At the basis of it, what we're thinking about is what is this next iteration of the internet? Because with Web 2, we introduce ourselves to images and videos, but with Web 3, what we're bringing is three-dimensional aspect of it, more natural interaction with the way we do things digitally, whether it's peer-to-peer and between ourselves, between consumers. We're also bringing the aspect of ownership into this, where content creators, consumers can actually own a piece of whatever is happening around them within Web 3. Mickael, I don't know if you have.
No, that's exactly that. To me, that's the internet of value. It's an internet of ownership for brands, for retailers, and for consumers.
So let's talk about how Web3 is impacting retail specifically, and why is it more relevant today than ever?
When we think about consumer experience in particular, right now there's such an overwhelm of different content and information that a lot of those channels are actually becoming not so effective anymore. And building this relationship between consumer and the brand and the retailer becomes more and more and more difficult. Because everyone's got e-commerce, a lot of e-commerce sites look quite similar. We are stuck with this white grid that we need to do something about. And when it comes to loyalty, to consumer engagement, how do we actually interact with particularly younger audiences, but also audiences as a whole, is becoming a challenge. And that's where when we think about Web3, particularly in the context of spatial interactions with brands and virtual stores and how we can navigate this, the power of 3D really comes across, and that's where it translates into all those different aspects that we'll talk about today.
So it really broadens the field for all the ways that you can interact with consumers and differentiate.
Absolutely.
Okay. So look, loyalty has become a very difficult issue with consumers. It's difficult for retailers to navigate loyalty and what loyalty looks like for different types of consumers. Everyone's kind of reimagining what loyalty means. It has to feel personal and it has to resonate with the consumers. And it's an issue, and especially with Gen Z, okay, which is an obvious up and coming customer base. So how do you think the virtual experience drives customer shopper retention?
I think the core to loyalty is engagement in the first place, right? Because if you're not engaged with the brand that you are trying to be loyal, if you're trying to make the consumer loyal to us, it's almost impossible to bring them back.
Yeah.
And that's where when we think about virtual experiences, particularly virtual stores, the absolute core of the experience is engagement. So every experience we would create for the brand is very deeply rooted in the brand values, in the brand image, and we're able to bring consumers in with this gamification process and making them part of the experience. And once they are engaged, that's where aspect of loyalty comes in, because it goes beyond kind of sign up for an email and get your 10% discount. It's get an action, bring some utility out of it. So I wanted to actually show this example of what we've done with Lacoste here. So we've launched this Lacoste virtual store and their virtual flagship in November last year. It's currently live on their website as well and gets continuously iterated. And what we've done here, and this was started very much focused on their Christmas campaign and evolving into a digital flagship. So people could navigate through the virtual store, interact with all those products in 3D, play a mini game. But a very interesting part that was part of this particular experience is a token gated room, where people had to hold a Lacoste NFT to actually enter this room to participate in raffles, win prizes, and engage further with the brand. And this is where we worked with Arianee, and we partnered together to be able to deliver this consumer experience. And yeah, over to Mickael to expand on that.
Yeah, let's talk about the fact that you guys were separate, okay, working with Lacoste,
Yeah.
and how you formed a partnership and what the different parts are.
Well, yeah, we were separate entities, and Lacoste put us together. And at the heart of it, it's about creating an amazing experience for their consumers, specifically for their underwater holders. And the way it comes together is by having this amazing space that you can navigate, that you can go in. On average, people came back 10 times. People that came to the space, they came back and they bought stuff, and that was really cool for them. And the partnership was also an extension of the experience by creating a space within the space, like a VIP room for holders, that you could enter if you had the right token, if you had the underwater token that they had distributed. And for those who entered, we created the engine to open the door, and you created this amazing extra space where you could purchase, you could experience the brand a little differently. And you talked about loyalty. One thing that was important to us, so whereas loyalty programs, I would argue today, are dead in the way that they are. I mean, who in the room has a loyalty program, and who is super excited about them? It's getting transactional. You buy my stuff, I'm giving you points to buy more of my stuff, knowing that you're gonna have to add extra dollars. Loyalty is evolving, and it's about creating those experiences. Because guess what? Those experiences are what you remember, because they make you feel something. I'm thinking about, we talked about the Maya Angelou quote. People will forget what you did to them, what you told them, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And that is where loyalty is going, and I think that's what we try to do, and we did with Lacoste.
Exactly, and that's where for Lacoste, one of the key parts for it was to engage the younger consumers and bring younger audiences. So we were actually able to lift their Gen Z traffic by more than 100%. And people kept coming back multiple times, often checking in every day. What is there? What's in that secret VIP room? And those types of experiences can be propagated, not necessarily just in the luxury and premium sector, but in just about any kind of loyalty program to bring utility into it.
Actually, let me touch on that a little bit, because we hadn't talked about this, but when you talk about they're coming back every day, and they're, I assume, wanting, some of it is just to do it again, but some of it is to see some newness. And content in retail is like a beast, okay? You always have to be serving new content. So how do the retailers handle this new content in these new experiences where the expectation is higher?
I think part of the key challenges with 3D experiences is maintaining them as well, because we saw a lot of them launching last year as a kind of one-off campaign. So in the case of Lacoste and a lot of the brands that we work with, they have access to a CMS platform to be able to continuously update it. So what Lacoste did, there was a new product appearing in the room every single day, and there was a raffle as well for people to actually win this as kind of 12 days of Christmas at that point. And those types of activations are what keeps it really fresh, because there's a strong sense of reward around what you're doing and why you're doing it, even if you're not necessarily winning anything big, right? It's just the sense of winning. It's just this, when you're playing like a Flappy Bird kind of game, that you won this extra point. Like that's kind of what keeps people coming back.
So let's talk about yeah, go ahead.
I want to touch on that because I want to add to it that there is I'm picturing a 2x2 matrix where there's the volume of what you create, but there's also the relevancy to me. It has to talk to me.
Yeah.
And in this endeavor of creating fresh content and relevant content, it has to tick both boxes. You got to do it often, and you got to do it personalized, or at least relevant to the person. And that's where, ingesting the data and understanding how people navigate your spaces, whether they're physical, online, immersive worlds, that becomes very important.
So let's actually talk about, in that context that you just talked about for personalization and data. Okay, data is an issue across retail, okay? So if you are talking about a personalized, let's talk about what data this enables you to have, okay? How you think about it from a cohesive experience across all the channels. So what data are you collecting? And then what I'm actually trying to get to is how do you use it and in what time frame to personalize that experience the next day or the next day or the next day?
I think that's where data in the context of virtual spaces and three-dimensional spaces becomes very, very valuable because it can be translated into both digital channels and also physical channels. So what we're able to see in the virtual spaces is, of course, all the high-level stuff, like the volume of traffic, how much time they spent there, conversion rates uplift, and things like that. But what's even more important is being able to track individual user journey up to a very granular level. What do they do? Where do they look? Where do they spend their time on? So that if I'm seeing that we have a corner in a virtual room and there's that chair there, but everyone is looking at that chair, you can very quickly say, hey, let's put a product in there, maximizing that screen time and that gaze time. Let's put some content in there, engage people even further. So that's what spatial data, and particularly three-dimensional data, is really allowing us to do. But beyond that, it can also be translated into physical channels, because we can actually test and learn on how does the visual merchandising work, what is impactful, what people get attracted to, and what are those particular elements. And to the personalization point, Mickael, over to you.
Thanks.
It actually becomes a testing sandbox for a much broader experience across any channel that they shop in.
Absolutely.
To me, also, when we talk about Web3, to me, there's a potential to create what is going to be geeky a bit, but zero-party data. So zero-party data means I'm coming to the website and the store with my own data. It's merely replicating what I'm doing in real life, right? I'm going to a Lacoste store with my polo, and I'm received well because of the way I look, and I have a Lacoste polo, let's say. I'm going to, and I'm on Madison, and I'm going on the Ralph Lauren store, and I'm going to be received well as well because I have a Lacoste polo. And this continuum of experience doesn't exist online, except if you collect a bunch of data. But collecting a bunch of data is going to be soon impossible. You're going to have no cookies. Meta is, sorry if there's any Meta people in the room, but it's like organized extortion is getting so expensive. You're going to have privacy laws that will prevent you from transferring your data even between your business units. So read the room, what's next is that while being respectful of people's privacy, going to a store, going to an immersive space online with my own data, and people will be able to serve a personalized experience just like when I'm going on the street with my polo at Lacoste. They know I have a Lacoste polo and they serve me well. It's the same thing online, actually.
Yeah. So it really opens up a much broader possibility. Let's talk a little bit about some of the metrics, because as you talked about knowing all of those pieces of data, how did this work? What were the results? Are there some key metrics that they were really excited about?
So in the case of Lacoste, there were 2 key metrics that we were looking at, but usually there's 2 to 3 that we would be kind of aiming to bring. One of them is always about engagement. So with Lacoste, we saw close to 12 minutes average engagement time that people would spend in the virtual space. Now imagine they're coming back 10 times and spending all of this time just in touch with the brand. Even if they're not buying anything right this second, it results in so much more memorabilia and connection, brand-customer connection. The other part of it is conversion rate uplifts. And that's where we would typically compare how does this consumer behavior actually translate into monetary value and how we can bring conversion into this. So for Lacoste, we actually saw for the products that were within the virtual space, 120% uplift on conversion rates compared to their regular e-commerce. A really, really significant impact of that engagement. And of course, how it impacts Gen Z traffic as well, both across their digital channels and in-store channels.
Can we just touch on Gen Z just for a second, because that's going to be the easier adoption, obviously, okay, but they're, and yes, you're planning for that, but do you have any metrics around how other cohorts engaged with the platform?
Yeah, and that's where the experience can be very much adapted to what your consumers are today as well. So while we can aim to go broader, to go into Gen Z and younger consumers, say in the case of Bloomingdale's, what we actually saw is nearly 40% of consumers were 40 plus that were engaging still for like 6 to 9 minutes with the virtual space. So it's really about adapting that experience, making it understandable for the consumer. And while with Lacoste we might shop inside a crocodile, with Ralph Lauren you would shop inside a ski chalet, which is super branded, but also much more natural for the consumer that is going into those spaces.
Okay, great. So let's talk about the intersection with AI, only because I don't think we're allowed to have a session without saying AI. So
You got to fill the quota, yeah.
Got to address the elephant in the room.
so I thought I'd better throw it in there, okay? But let's talk about AI as it relates to where is it in this, plane of development, and how is it, what's the impact of it on these types of experiences?
You go ahead.
I mean, to me, with AI, we are all poets. We are all coders, all designers. It brought creation tools in the hands of everybody. And there's a potential for brands to harvest this distribution of creation and bring your community together to help create. I'm thinking Lacoste, they are particular, Lacoste, Nike is doing it really well with swoosh. But there's a potential to put in the hands of the consumers. Hi guys. Well.
Oh, no.
Well, it's not New York without a siren.
I believe it's just a test. Just a test.
Oh, it's just a test.
It all works out.
Notice we said AI and decided to alarm the
They
public.
will announce it if it's a test or if it's an actual emergency.
So, Lacoste, I was saying, has given their community some power to co-create as a community, and they are now, so they co-created some pieces of garments, some clothing, and now they're selling to the same community, and it's not launched yet, but I'm assuming that, I'm looking forward to see the engagement numbers and the buying number, the uplift, as you mentioned, and yeah.
So it is a phenomenal tool that broadly makes anyone a creator and helps build that community, basically. Okay, you become part of a community of creators just by utilizing AI and how it feeds into this technology.
And I think beyond that, when we think about virtual spaces and Web3 context, the ability to create and the amount of creativity that can go into it is virtually limitless. We can't really do that in traditional e-commerce because we have the limits of the grid. In 3D, we do not. We can shop underwater, we can shop on the moon. It doesn't really matter. So it's about the power of creativity. And that's where generative AI becomes a tool to actually bring that creativity to life a bit faster, a bit easier when it comes to design, giving not just consumers, but also the brands the power to design better experiences that, going back to our previous point, are also incredibly data-driven.
Okay, so now let's talk about real world. This is, it's actually, you're showing this and results, but for the vast majority, it is still, oh yeah, I'll worry about that later. Okay, all right, I can't, So what are the challenges for getting started and, or not how to get started, but what really are the challenges in doing this that you've seen? And what is the critical tipping point where this becomes everybody is like taking advantage of this?
I think one of the key challenges we saw specifically last year was a lot of virtual spaces launching, metaverse platforms. I'm going to bring up the M word that were coming out last year. Is okay, the experience is great, and we're seeing a lot of results from that experience and the benefits. How do we actually get people into those experiences? And that's where mostly we would see the necessity to drive traffic into it, whether via paid social or other channels. And we would usually work with our brands to help them do that through their marketing. And of course, it's super important to market the virtual space. What we're thinking about it now is bringing organic traffic into this. So what we've actually enabled is search engine optimization within the virtual spaces. So if you're looking for that Lacoste polo on Google, we'll bring you straight into the virtual world rather than onto the website directly, where we can bring that engagement, bring that discovery, and straight away put the consumer into a better user journey compared to starting from a plain white page and a PDP.
So that is the best way to innovate, getting them. I mean, look, we've been talking about this for forever. The key to a customer experience is to take out friction. And what you talked about just now is instead of, yes, the retailer pushing, and they know what social channels are successful and all that, so they can push, but my gosh, this to be able to go right to, as a consumer, just be taken right there would be a very different experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. So those are ways that kind of new innovations would.
I think beyond that, on the innovations, I mean, I'm sure everyone in the room has heard about Apple Vision Pro and the rise of spatial computing these days. And that's where, by doing this today and starting the strategy today, we're able to prepare for that tomorrow of computing becoming more and more natural to us, closer and closer, even beyond, we all live with our phones today. How do we take the websites in the context of shopping beyond this when we're actually able to do this all around us? And the websites as they are today would not work for that type of future. And when we're starting to think about spatial computing, that's where Web3 and virtual spaces especially come to play.
Okay. So what do you think, when we talked about challenges, okay, but challenges internally also, like how, if this is exciting, okay, I mean, in some ways I could just say, how do you start? How do people go home and start? What is the best way to start?
That's a great question. I'm talking to so many brands that they see the movement happening. They don't want to miss the train, but yet they don't know how to get on the train. And they have self-diagnosed analysis paralysis. They're like, we have to do something meaningful because now we're late, but it has to be. Anyway, the way you start, and you have to, I think, champion a project that's both narrow and innovative in the short term, but also ambitious and transformative in the long term. And you have to do it with a SWAT team internally. You have to have finance on board, legal on board, your operations on board, and form a small committee of 0 to 1 sprinters and find the narrowest scope that you can. If you think about Web3 and Metaverse and those brands that are killing it today, they started super narrow and mini project, and they found one step, one success, and then they expanded. I would challenge you guys to find the narrowest scope, and but with a broad application if it's successful, and just go for it.
Actually, I want to take that back a step because this is something we've talked a lot about over the years. Retailers always trying to, talk to the consumer, but honestly, what's most important and what our challenges are in retail is stop with the shiny objects. Some things are not appropriate for everybody, okay? And don't put a robot in the store if the consumer experience isn't going to benefit from it. You spent all that money and all of that. So I would start with the company, your vision, who you are, who your brand is, what you're trying to do. Start there, obviously, because how you do this and start has to be a narrow piece of something super meaningful to you as who you stand for, your company ethos, who your customer is. Like, that's how you should be making your decisions, and then decide in a very narrow way, how to get started. But start with, does this make sense for my consumer and my brand?
And a funny thing also is, like, post creation of this virtual space, Lacoste now wanted to replicate that in real life almost, and they're trying to bring elements, visual elements from this space to their stores. So it also feeds, the IRL business in the real physical business.
Yeah, that's great, because the store experience, even if you have places in the store that are showing this, it could be really interesting. Yeah.
And I think as we think about translating the digital experience into store experience and store into digital and all this, kind of creating a more unified customer experience across all those channels, that's where bringing technologies like Web3, like virtual spaces, really, really helps. Actually, what I wanted to touch on is the little QR code cards that you have on your table. We wanted to bring them in as a bit of an illustration of how this particularly can work in the context of omnichannel, in the context of loyalty and all these things we were talking about here. So what those do is, if you scan the QR code, you'll end up in a smaller snippet of the Thatcher virtual store. It's live on their website, where you can collect a little token, which is a coin in the middle of it, then claim a gift at our booth later down the line. But the principle of this is how we build that interaction. This is how we build that loyalty in the transition from the digital space into the physical space and the kind of future of loyalty schemes.
I can't wait to do the QR code. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Very enlightening.